All right, on this week's episode of I-501-CU, the podcast for you know it, nonprofit board members, Mark Martella is being interviewed. Mark is an attorney focusing on estate planning, probate, and trust administration. He's been on several boards and board chair, and he's going to share with you a wealth of advice from his experience as serving on nonprofit boards. Welcome, Mark. Hey, did you know that we have a YouTube channel with all these podcasts and video? You get to see what's going on, what we look like when we're doing these podcasts. So if you'd like to go take a look, it's youtube.com/@thecorley-company. We'll see you there. Mark, if you would, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your practice, and the boards that you've served on, and we'll go from there.
Well, first, thank you for having me on. Real excited to do this. I've been a long-time fan, so first-time caller, as they say. But believe it or not, I've been practicing for 37 years. Started in New Jersey, actually in Atlantic City, and in 2004 moved down to Florida. Got kind of sick of the rat race up there. My office was in Jersey City when I came down here. Promptly greeted 4 days after moving here by Hurricane Charlie in Punta Gorda. So that was an interesting introduction. I started with the Wititsky firm in Punta Gorda, but I had been out on my own in New Jersey, and I wanted to go back out on my own. So in 2008, I opened my practice in the middle of the financial crisis. So I decided to lean into that and focused on bankruptcy and foreclosure defense. I had always done some bankruptcy, but I figured this was the opportunity because I wasn't going to pay the mortgage doing real estate closing. So we did that until about 2015. I was approached by a firm in Sarasota, iCard Merrill, to basically merge my firm into theirs because they wanted to grow their presence in Charlotte County. And then I eventually decided to go back out on my own. But when I made the decision to go back out on my own, it was a totally different experience, totally different practice. And really what had happened was I had gone through the end-of-life journey with my mom. And I had always done this estate planning, but as I was doing it as an attorney, especially a younger attorney, it was just documents. When I'm using them for my mom, now I'm getting to see them in action. And when you're dealing with the end-of-life journey with somebody, the legal documents are the easiest part of it. It's all the other stuff, the emotions, the stress, the dealing with the different agencies, the facilities. And, none of us are taught this in school. I was fortunate in that I knew people in the industry that were able to help guide me. But when you're suddenly hit with this, and this is how it normally happens, right? Mom takes a fall, you get a call, especially if the kids are up north, and now they're scrambling. So having gone through that journey and also wanting to go back out on my own, January 1 of 2023, I decided to relaunch my own practice and decided to focus just on estate planning, probate, and Medicaid planning. And we've been unbelievably busy since that time, but it's like I said, the legal documents are the easy part. So much of what I'm doing is counseling them on here's what to anticipate. And again, it's things like, especially when we're dealing with dementia, I have to get to them early. They don't have to, they could, be a little forgetful and stuff, but they have to knowingly understand the documents that they're signing. As long as they know that, then we're good. But when they're too far gone, when they don't even recognize their kids, now I can't help them. They have to go through the process of a guardianship, which becomes very expensive. You got to have two attorneys involved. So that's what I've been doing really the last 3 years exclusively, and it's been very rewarding.
Well, you've certainly built your practice and you're a great resource, but that is not all you've been doing. You have continued to serve on nonprofit boards, and that's how we first met a number of years ago. But let me ask you, talk a little bit about your nonprofit board service. Which ones and why over the years have you done so?
Well, originally, I did it because I was asked, but actually a little more than that. So I got involved in my first nonprofit. I went through a program called Leadership Charlotte through the Charlotte County Chamber. And one of the first days they have is, nonprofit day. and we visited the Homeless Coalition. And I had seen that as an issue in Charlotte County, and I said to one of the members of my class that was also on the board, "Hey, if there's ever an opening, I'd be interested in joining." Lo and behold, next week there was an opening. So that was my introduction to the nonprofit world. I served on that board for many, many years. I also served on the Charlotte County Chamber Board, two very different things. Served on the United Way board for a little while. And I've also acted as counsel to different nonprofits, being able to leverage my experience and try to advise boards. And I mean, you see it all the time, what a challenge it is to be on a board, especially financially struggling nonprofits. So it's been a learning curve. And after taking a respite for a number of years, I was just asked to join the Senior Friendship Center's board. Although I'm new, it's a very exciting experience.
Well, and I was excited to see that because Erin McLeod was a guest on this podcast, episode number 72, a little over a year ago, February of 2024. And she's a phenomenal leader. And I'm so glad that you're joining that organization because they really do such great work. Now, going back, so you've been on boards that are 501c3s, 501c6s. Compare and contrast that. You even said it yourself. It was really different. Can you just compare and contrast your experience and the expectations of board members on those different types of boards?
Again, with the C3s, again, depends on which kind you're on, but if it's mission driven, now you have a real responsibility to the clients of that. And depends upon their, financial standing. So when I was on the Charlotte County Chamber of Commerce, well, you're promoting business. Not too hard to do. And again, with the Charlotte County Chamber, I was fortunate to serve when Julie Mathis was the executive director. And anybody who knew Julie, she was fantastic. Made it very easy to be president and on the board, and extremely financially sound. No debt, so no debt, owned the building, pretty easy. Showed up, had the script. Whereas serving on the Homeless Coalition, for example, I came on in 2008, 2009, and middle of financial crisis, and we were about to open up the shelter, first 52-bed shelter. And while it was great planning for the shelter, no one thought about operating funds. So that was my first meeting, and a significant percentage of gray hair is from serving on that board. So I learned, I got an education by fire on that board. So that was, the difference there was just the finances and having that security and that challenge and the stress of, there's kids depending on having a roof over their head, having a hot meal. A lot of employees. When I was there, we had over 25 employees, depending on you. So it was a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. A big difference from my experience from the chamber or even a United Way versus, a nonprofit that's actually a service provider.
Yeah. And so when you decided to join these boards, did you have a philosophy as you come on, or even most recently with the Seniors Friendship Center? There's a reason you said yes. You can allocate your time anywhere and do anything. So what makes you say yes to board service and maybe no to others?
Well, in the beginning, I was naive, right? I want to help end homelessness. Well, it's not that easy. And so there wasn't a lot of thought put into it other than, hey, I'd like to help out and give back. Based on my experience, when I was approached by Erin, totally different approach to it. I toured the Venice facility and really had deep conversations with her, not only on finances, but the executive leadership. And she really impressed me. And I did my due diligence by talking to people I knew, like you, about it. So I did my due diligence, was provided with the financials, and just felt extremely comfortable. And then the mission totally aligns with my present practice. So really hit all three boxes, and it made it easy for me to say yes in that situation.
Well, I like the intentionality that of you joining the board, and maybe as we get older, we get more mature, and we understand that it makes a lot of sense to do that, to do that due diligence. And I encourage anybody listening, if you're approached to be on a board, do your due diligence. It's got to be a two-way fit. Now, for a number of these organizations, you've ascended to the role of board chair, and so now you're in the leadership role of the respective nonprofit. Did you have a philosophy, or do you have a leadership philosophy as a board chair?
Well, I mean, I really like to, let the executive director lead. I see situations where, people want to get involved. That's not the role of the board or the board chair. It's to oversee. And I put a lot of trust into the executive director. I learned that, to quote Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. That's where I'm sure you've seen a lot of nonprofits getting into trouble. And so that's the challenge, not being too hands-on, but not getting into the daily nitty-gritty personnel stuff. And I've seen that where employees are calling board members. You have to stop that.
Yeah, that would be that's when things start to go awry. And you're right, that trust but verify. And that's a line to walk, and it's really challenging sometimes. And so when you're sitting at the head of that table, how did you work to engage other board members? Are there any tips that you use as board chair to ensure that the group around the table were all participating and in line?
So, I had the good fortune of serving on boards with some really good people. And the one thing I learned that I would, advise any board chair or really any board member is to listen, right? We have two ears and one mouth. Listen and then speak last after you hear everyone's opinions. And then you can shape things. The one thing I found, especially as being board chair, people are not willing to speak out. So you could maneuver anything that you wanted and sell it. And then, being an attorney, I'm used to making presentations and arguments. So very rare that I got a no. But really, that's what you need to do. Be prepared, listen, speak last, and hopefully you can, navigate any challenges or the direction you want to move the organization.
Yeah, I like that. And let me ask you this. So in all your experience, what makes a good board member? You've seen good ones, you've seen bad ones. What traits, what qualities make an effective nonprofit board member?
Well, to go back on one of your prior questions, what do I consider when joining a board? And I'd say the most important thing is having some sort of passion for the mission of the organization. So early on, I joined a couple of boards because I was asked. And I thought it was the right thing to do, but I didn't have passion for it. So you want a board member that's engaged in this for some reason. And then committees, right? Get their feet wet, get them involved. And unfortunately, the 80-20 rule applies. But if you can move that along by getting them engaged, helping them out, finding out what they like to do and what they're comfortable with, right? The hardest thing is having board members ask for donations. Nobody likes to do that, but they might help out on fundraising. They might help out with IT stuff. They might help out packing food, depending on what it is. So nonprofit is a small business. So there's so many things, so many skill sets needed. That's what I like to tell people. Look, you have some skill, some talent that you can provide that will help us move along. So that's how I try to get them engaged. What are they good at? What do they feel comfortable doing? And let's try to engage them in that way.
How do you think your nonprofit board service has helped you be a better attorney or business owner? How has that benefit, spending that time on that side and leadership, helped in your practice?
Well, again, I've been solo a lot for a particular reason. I don't like working with other attorneys. But working with a board, and now you may have 15, 20 other people that you have to work with. That's why I said the biggest thing I learned, and I learned it from other elders, I'll call them, who showed me the way, is really listening, and let's find that common ground. One of the biggest challenges I had with the Homeless Coalition is we decided we wanted to open up some sort of earned income. and ultimately was a thrift store. That took a lot of hands. I was the head of it, and I got a lot of credit for it, but it was only because I chaired it. The only major contribution I made is I wrote the business plan for a thrift store that I knew absolutely nothing about. So I can write, and there's a lot of creative writing, but that business plan got us $100,000 grant from a foundation, and that got us rolling. But it was all the hard work of other board members and obviously the staff that really got it going. And now it's doing about 30 grand a month gross. So that's a game changer. But it took a lot of faith from a lot of other people. So it's finding my role. So again, my role was not knowing how to do retail, but I could write something. So I contributed in that way. And so I can take those type of things, really help me dealing with people and dealing with clients, right? And getting people to, agree things, understanding things, and really having the patience to listen.
I think that might be one of the number one benefits of being on a nonprofit board is the patience to listen. I like that. That was my experience too, because you want to move faster. People are talking, you're going crazy. You're like, oh, come on, let's just cut through let's get to it. And you can't do that. So there's a young attorney out there, a young Mark Martella, who says, I am building my practice. I am too busy to be on a nonprofit board. What would you say to him or her?
Well, again, there's two types of attorneys out there: those who just, want to bill hours and stuff, and then there's those who may have more of an entrepreneurial spirit and want to build their own practice. And if you want to do that, there's nothing better than joining a nonprofit board. For starters, just meeting other community leaders that you would never ever meet. When I joined the chamber board, I'm on there with the president of the hospital, the president of the university, the city manager. I mean, people I never would have met. And through my board service, I've made lifelong friends, referral sources. So it's one of the best ways to not only market yourself, but when people see you out there, if they have a choice between two different attorneys, they're probably going to choose you, especially if they met you through some event. So it is part of your practice. It is part of your business building. If you're spending time doing videos for your website, going to chamber meetings, you contribute the time for that for a nonprofit board too. And again, it's very rewarding.
Nonprofit board service, we've said it's the best career development available to business leaders. And you've just said, and even one better, it's probably one of the best marketing networking aspects that you can do without really being salesy. So I really like that, Mark. Mark, is there anything else before we go you'd like to share about board service, serving nonprofits out in our community?
Well, I would really encourage it, because there's so much that people have to offer, especially, as I'm involved with the coalition, everybody thinks, oh, I want to serve meals. Well, that's one small part of it, but there's so many other things that are necessary. If you have, IT skills, that is such a valuable resource. If you can man the social media page, that is such a valuable resource for a nonprofit, especially if they don't have the funds to do that. So there's something that you could contribute. Find a nonprofit that you have a passion for, whether it's people, whether it's animals, and you can contribute in some way and get that reward in return inside.
So, Mark, you are practicing and focused on estate planning, probate, and trust administration. How does somebody get in touch with you if they want to learn a little bit more about your practice?
So real easy. You want to learn more about me, just go to martellalaw.com. You'll find out about me. We have over 75 informational videos. We have offices in Port Charlotte and in Venice, and our number is 941-867-6865.
And there you go, how to get in touch with Mark. And he's got the best videos, very informative. I follow him on LinkedIn, and your nuggets are absolutely fantastic, Mark, to help those of us who are at that age where we worry about our parents and ourselves and getting all that estate planning in place. So, Mark, really appreciate that, and appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun and flew by.
All right, we just heard from Mark, and this segment is called Recapping with Reed. And I realized we haven't shared with people why we call it that. Well, Reed is our podcast producer. He produces a number of podcasts around town. And when we started this, we thought it'd be an opportunity to give him a voice in what we were talking to our guests about. So this has become one of the favorites for people around who listen, the Recapping with Reed. So Reed, what are your 3 takeaways from today's interview?
My first takeaway is something that Mark kind of said that I don't think we've heard from anybody else. And that is, when you're working with the 501c3 that has clients, like there is a stress involved in caring for those clients as a board member. He's talking about the Homeless Coalition and how they opened up right in 2008, 2009, and the operating budget wasn't there and all the stress involved with that. And I really don't think we've heard that from many other people.
Yeah, very good. Number 2.
When it comes to joining a board, do your due diligence. Ask about their finances, the leadership. Make sure it truly is an organization that you want to put that time into.
Great advice. And number 3.
For board chair philosophy, let the executive director lead.
And there you go. We can end on that one. I-501C, the podcast for nonprofit board members, and we will I-501C you next week.